Welcome everyone to Radicalized Truth Survives. This is a special breaking news presentation. We are so grateful to have Nadine Smith with Equality Florida with us. I've wanted to speak with her for about half a year now, and the situation in Florida being a laboratory for authoritarianism has never been more grave. And Nadine is here to explain to us and what our viewers need to know, what we can do, how we can be helpful, and also the personal toll that it's taken on her family and her work. Hello, welcome, welcome.
Hi.
So happy to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to do a quick little brief intro. As everybody probably knows, taking effect July 1st, Florida is looking at HB 1577, the Don't Say Gay law, which apparently prohibits classroom discussion of sexual orientation in grades K through 3 and enables parents to sue teachers over the issue. And obviously this is a manufactured problem that they searched to find a solution on, and it's created quite a firestorm. But Nadine, what can you tell our viewers about what's been happening and honestly how we can help?
Absolutely. Well, this bill is part of what we call the censorship and surveillance agenda of Governor Ron DeSantis. He is following the, basically he's checking the boxes for his presidential run in 2024. He wants to outflank Trump to the right. And part of that is going after, critical race theory. But really what that is their stand-in for having honest conversations about racism. They're going after corporations, their Stop Woke agenda, which is really to say to companies, we are the carrot and the stick. If you go along, we give you access to public coffers. If you get in the way of our culture war strategy for winning votes, then we're going to be punitive. And they have been crystal clear. They have name-checked a number of companies, and just to send the message that we don't care how much you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you can't bring that in front of us in terms of how we legislate. And so what we are seeing is that checklist playing out. We saw it in Virginia. We're seeing it in Florida. So it's not driven by anything that's happening in Florida. The legislature actually has one job, to pass a budget. They didn't do that, but they did pass an abortion ban. They did pass the Don't Say Gay bill. They did pass the so-called Stop Woke legislation. And all of this is about book banning. It is about censorship. He's called for surveillance of classrooms where every conversation is monitored and recorded between teachers and students. And what I think this has done is awaken some people who haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about it to the steady erosion of protections that have occurred under DeSantis. And we need only look at the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is conducted in schools all across the state, to see that the safety of students has degraded under his tenure.
Of course. This is a show, an investigative show about disinformation. We are all students of authoritarianism. We're students of history. I know we all have questions we want to ask you, but for me, this is a Benito Mussolini moment for Ron DeSantis, and the fact that this is playing out in states and that they are manufacturing these crises and using these issues of racism as wedges to divide people is almost just like straight out of the Mussolini playbook. And having, your life's work being fighting for equality, how horrifying is this for you as a Floridian to see this playing out in real time?
Well, for me as a parent, it's been quite horrifying to see the kind of rhetoric, how quickly they went from talking about this bill in terms, in the legislature as a bill intended to stop any acknowledgement of the existence of gay people, any acknowledgement of the existence of LGBTQ students, and how swiftly it became the governor, through his spokesperson, labeling anyone who opposes this a pedophile. And the thing is, we've seen this before. We saw it in the 50s with the Johns Committee, where you had a committee built by the legislature that had the purpose of purging civil rights activists, Black leadership, and LGBT people from the university and school systems. And they were very efficient. They destroyed many lives. There were a number of people that committed suicide. I had a friend who was the target of one of those investigations, and to avoid, they put the newspaper from her hometown where her parents were quite well known, and they said, "You're either going to give us names, or this is going to be the headline: pervert, outed at the University of Miami." And she was compelled to keep a diary of dates with men that she had to produce on demand. So you can look at the history and you can see, again, this twin assault on Black leadership, civil rights, and the LGBT community. Then fast forward to the 70s and you see it again with Anita Bryant and her so-called Save Our Children campaign, which was delivering this same message of calling LGBT people groomers, pedophiles. And who was backing her? The moral majority, Jerry Falwell.
Right.
And a lot of people think Jerry Falwell came to power around abortion, but it was actually desegregation of schools. That was the leading issue. In fact, it was 5 years after Roe v. Wade before Jerry Falwell even made one speech having anything to do with abortion. Southern Baptists were pro-abortion until after that. And so, once again, we see the issue of confronting racial issues, our history, and particularly integration are driving, once again, this narrative about the, that creates this idea that the majority is at risk, that there's a moral panic that requires this excessive curtailing of rights. In one school district, the same people pushing the Don't Say Gay bill and the Stop Woke Act challenged, I think it was 156 books, almost all of them by Black authors or including LGBT content. And just to understand how extreme these people are, they went after a book called And Tango Makes Three. And this is a book based on the true story of two male penguins at a New York zoo that are raising a penguin chick together. And this is what they call obscene and pornographic and call for its removal from schools. They said the same thing about Mommy, Mama, and Me, and My Two Dads, calling these, once again, obscene and pornographic. And in fact, they describe one scene where the child is sitting on their dad's lap, and the language they use is basically that the child's backside is pressed against the zipper of a male in a manner that is suggestive of obscenity. I mean, you just go, oh my God, do you even hug your children? Do you have, it's that their mind, that they project their just depravity on other people is really clear.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Jim.
What you said about them quickly transferring from what a cultural wokeism to accusing people of pedophilia. I think that's a very important point and an incredibly disturbing escalation of the rhetoric, right? Because it is the same rhetoric that has been used for hundreds or thousands of years in order to justify genocide in many cases. It's incredibly disturbing that the government of an entire state would be using effectively QAnon tactics.
Yes.
That's what QAnon did.
Absolutely.
Against real people. I wanted to thank you for pointing that out, and also just thank you for your service, for your life's work, and for what you're doing right now. And I'm sorry what's happening to your family.
I appreciate that.
I have been the subject of attacks myself, so I can relate. You mentioned the spokesperson. Are we talking about Christine Pushaw?
Yes, we are. We are. They
Yes.
position her in this way that they think allows them plausible deniability when she says something absolutely horrific. But it's very clear that she is the mouthpiece for the governor. She speaks his thoughts. He has never once distanced himself. And in fact, he not only is he not distanced, he's embraced her talking point. And there's some irony in the fact that when they announced that he was signing the bill, they waited, I think, 20 minutes before the actual signing. They had it carefully constructed in the most cowardly way. They had it at a charter school run by Richard Corcoran's wife, and that's the outgoing former Speaker of the House, former outgoing Commissioner of Education. So they had this very tightly controlled environment where no reporters they hadn't alerted in advance and handpicked could ask questions, that the parents in that space would be carefully choreographed. But we heard about it because other parents who found out about it were outraged. Parents in that school, in that fairly conservative school, were outraged. And to make matters worse, if you look at the press conference that he held, where he was holding up posters that aren't posters that are shown to K through 3 kids, and invoking all of this transphobic vitriol, all this anti-LGBT vitriol, all of that was beamed into the classrooms of children in that school. And the parents parent reached out to us, absolutely livid, and the irony is the thing that he claims is happening that isn't, he just did in that school.
Exactly.
Exposing these children to indoctrination around sexual orientation and gender identity.
Well,
it's projection. It's what fascists always do. Right?
That's right.
They project what they're doing onto others. Sorry, Heidi, go ahead.
No, I'm
just real quick. These bills, Florida is, a state where, obviously because of our size and the fact that we have 3 people likely running for president, Trump, DeSantis, and probably Rick Scott. The politics here are sort of a bellwether of what the country can expect. But these bills are cut and paste from conservative think tanks that, so it's not just Florida. These are being introduced all across the country. But in Florida, we pushed back. We didn't just let their rhetoric machine saying this have anything to do with parental rights. It's the opposite. And actually, there's a book banning bill that passed as well that basically allows people who don't even have kids in a school to challenge the books in my kid's school or your kid's school. And it is the absolute epitome of handing over control of education to people who want to indoctrinate, who want to censor, who want to ban books.
Right.
So
go ahead, Sean.
My sister-in-law is the director of literature and curriculum for one of the school districts here in Texas, and she's very similarly has been obviously Texas has had its host of horrific laws and bills passed in the past year or two, but she's been dealing with something very similar in a more conservative upper middle class sort of area outside of Austin. Similar, roughly 100 books that she had on her curriculum have gotten banned, and constant abuse, threats online, also in person. She's had a very, very rough year. In hearing you say this, hasn't been to quite the extent that you have unfortunately experienced, but there is a playbook. There must be some sort of playbook. I mean,
yes.
Her online harassment, her efforts from not only her colleagues, certain more conservative colleagues, but individuals online, almost trying to get her to quit, to force her way out. And she's so close to retirement. It's one of those situations where, she's really dug in, and it's been a really tough year for her. And hearing that this is happening across the country,
yes.
to these little pockets, is very disheartening. And again, as I told her, it's the sort of tenacity that you have, and the iron will is a sort of model, and it's inspiring, to talk with you guys and to see on the front lines really defending these rights and defending our freedoms. We talk about it on the show as much as we can, and then to have a guest such as yourself is very inspiring for myself, and I know the rest of the team here. Yeah.
Yes, I do want to say that calling it a rhetoric machine is very important, because we are all students right now of Nancy McLean's Democracy in Chains. We are interviewing her, and we are learning that the Coke machine employs 3 times more than the government employees of the GOP. So that's 3 times more firepower they have to create these narratives and these operations, creating problems that don't exist, whether it's CRT, whether it's this bill that just passed, whether it's the school boards. any single assault on democracy that they can make in order to protect their adored capitalism is exactly what we're seeing. And so I think Hi-Fi has a really smart question about, is this a solution? You can frame it better than I can, Hi-Fi, a solution, and for a problem that does not exist.
Yeah, and that is my question. Prior to DeSantis, doing what he did in the charter school, and writing this law, which I'd like to offer a quick analysis of this law after you answer the question. But it's what part of official Florida curriculum had anything to do with what he was saying? Oh, we got to stop this from happening, because it doesn't seem like that is something that was even occurring. Is he making up a problem to deliver a solution?
Absolutely, not just on this issue, but no, there's no school teaching critical race theory in Florida or any place other than colleges where you select that as a
It's a graduate class. It's a graduate class.
Yeah.
So yes, these are completely fabricated, and they're intended to create within the electorate that he is seeking to insert from Trump, this sense of outrage, this sense of moral panic,
That's right.
That anything you do, I mean, what if you think if I thought somebody was abusing my child, I mean, there's nothing off the table, right? And that
Knives
sense,
out.
right? Yeah. That sense in us to protect children, which is a good and noble instinct, is being twisted by DeSantis and weaponized. Absolutely. And so, no, there's no issue. In fact, they keep trotting out this woman who is suing a school district because the teachers were using the name that affirmed the child's gender at school, and she was upset by that. But the fact that this bill doesn't address that. In fact, they're in court going through a process that will handle the issue that she's raising, having nothing to do with this bill whatsoever. So it's sort of like the issues that you are claiming exist don't exist, but what you've actually done is created the chilling effect. And I do want to be clear that the purpose behind these bills is not just the text, it's the context. If you listen to the hearings, if you listen to the sponsors of this bill defending it, all they're talking about is, we don't like that there's so many gay people. We want them to go away, and we want schools to be fearful of creating an accepting environment for either LGBT young people or the parents of students who have, kids who have two moms or two dads. We want it to be a hostile environment. We want to force you back in the closet. And so you have Dennis Baxley, who was the Senate sponsor, who is somebody who compared being gay to a drug addiction or criminal behavior or abuse. He's quoted in the paper saying he will never do anything that affirms the existence of gay families. And he has kept his promise with this bill. In Joe Harding, you have somebody who stood on stage with the so-called Moms for Liberty, the sort of AstroTurf right-wing group that actually began calling opponents groomers. This is where the governor got that talking point. So he stood on stage with people who labeled opposition LGBT people as pedophiles. And he pushed an amendment that would have required school districts to out a student, even if the school knew for a fact that doing so would lead to abuse, neglect, or abandonment of that child. And only under extraordinary pressure from within some parts of his own party did that amendment get removed. So this is who's pushing it. This is who's driving it. Right. And now you have the governor using a megaphone to really come after not just us, but the students themselves.
Yes.
There's been amazing organizing on campuses, student-led. There was a walkout where thousands and thousands of students poured out of the classroom, not just LGBT students, but their classmates going, this is outrageous. They understand that they're going to bear the brunt of this attack. Well, now those students are being harassed online. They're being called pedophiles. They're, it's so ugly. But the rhetoric that is being directed at them was first generated into this conversation by the governor's office himself. So,
That's right.
this is what we're up against.
So
But the good news is, I
yes.
would say that there is some good news in the fact, number one, students are organizing themselves. They're pushing back. The majority of Floridians oppose this. Most people understand that it is a political strategy by DeSantis to ring his cash register nationally and appeal to Republican primary voters in other states as he prepares for battle with Trump. And the battle between Trump and DeSantis has been playing out mostly behind the scenes, but occasionally erupting in public. DeSantis has basically said Trump capitulated to COVID theater during his term and let Fauci lead him too much. And of course, Trump has said that DeSantis is a coward for hiding the fact that he's vaccinated and likely boosted as well. And I'll just add one other thing. If you haven't seen this clip, I encourage people to see it because it crystallizes exactly who DeSantis is and exactly how he functions. He had a press conference and he wanted students as his props behind him. But the students were wearing masks. So you see a clip of him
Yes.
walking in, going ballistic, telling them to take the masks off.
Yes.
And then, calling it ridiculous, calling it COVID theater. And then at the end, kind of half-heartedly saying, well, keep them on if you want to. But, this is absurd.
This is ridiculous.
But during it, you see one student who's clearly being motioned off
right, well,
screen.
it's good to
One
be
of
at
the
USF.
few students that chose to keep his mask on. You see him being motioned off screen. He goes off screen, and when he comes back, his mask is off because he was told point blank by a staff member, take that mask off immediately. And so it's just the epitome. When he says, he's trying to use this rhetoric of a free Florida, free to do what you're told by him. There's rewards for his loyalists, and there's nothing but punishment and retribution for anyone who stands up to him or challenges him. And we're seeing this now with businesses. He's declared war on Disney. He's declared war on any company that dares to stand up and say, hey, this makes life more hostile for our employees. This is making it harder for us to recruit talent into the state. You telling us how and if we can do diversity, equity, and inclusion training in our companies puts us at a disadvantage. Any of that, and he has made it crystal clear that he's going to go after you in whatever way is available to him.
It's very
And I just
interesting. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to end with this because if you're willing to do that, if you can intimidate companies that have extraordinary resources, how much more vulnerable is a kid in a classroom? How much more vulnerable is just an ordinary family trying to make sure that their kid has a safe learning environment where they don't have to hide or lie about who they are or who their family is?
That's right. I'm relieved that Disney did issue the statement that said their goal as a company is for this law to be repealed by the legislature or struck down in the courts. That did give me some comfort. But I will tell you, when I saw those children, when he signed the bill, and I saw those children standing behind him, to me, I just shuddered being German and thinking about Nazi youth and children being used as props. There's no, and also being the mother of a gay daughter, about to graduate from Wellesley, about to go into this world. She's a social justice warrior and a poet laureate, and about to go into this world where we are seeing this aggressive authoritarianism play out. And one thing I do want to say is just back in 2015, lifelong Republicans, the traditional Republicans, could have stood up to this fifth column. And they did not. They rolled to the fifth column, which now has an enormous amount of power, an enormous amount of money behind it. And we are in, I believe, dire straits, seeing the systemic attacks on all of the things that we have taken for granted in our democracy. And I guess with that, what can we do to help? What can we and our viewers and the bullhorn that we have here, how can we be helpful to fight back?
Right. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. There were those in the Republican Party who got addicted to the quick cash and the secure votes of whipping up culture wars, and then did not realize they were going to create the monster that devoured them. And now it is out of control, and it is driven by what it is always driven by, fear of a diverse planet, fear of a diverse country. I remember the day that I realized that Donald Trump was going to be the president. It was 2015. It was before he had officially declared. And I was at a conference, and there was a demographer named Jim Johnson from University of North Carolina, and he was talking about the browning of America. He said there are two demographic realities that are colliding. One is the graying of America, the other is the browning of America, where we have an older population that is overwhelmingly white because of healthcare disparities, income disparities, all of these things. And then you have a younger population that is increasingly diverse, where there's no single demographic that is in the majority. And so for a lot of the ability to play to a sort of white panic about this demographic reality is why we have the birther, basically the birther scandal is really about challenging the citizenship of brown people, period. So it makes sense that if you're in a panic about the browning of America, what you do is you make immigrants with brown skin the enemy. You have this sort of law and order rhetoric so that the criminal justice pipeline continues to expand and take Black and brown people off of the voting rolls. And you appeal to a kind of nostalgia for a time that you now look at through, tinted glasses that ignore the racism, the sexism, the homophobia, and that is what we are dealing with: voter repression, voter suppression, gerrymandering. What they call the rule of small numbers. We don't have to do big, huge things, although they're trying that as well.
Yeah.
We just have to shave enough off here and there so that we are controlling the election. We are damaging. They want fewer people to vote. We want more people to vote. Right. And so I think this is a moment, is a gut check moment for everybody. It's a gut check moment for companies that have gotten the message after North Carolina when they pushed back against HB2. And, there was a governor who was on his way to a presidential, run who suddenly had turned his state into a place that people were boycotting. Businesses were moving out, conferences and concerts were canceling, all of that. And he didn't even make it through re-election. Companies have to say to themselves, either these things we say about looking out for diversity, equity, and inclusion among our workforce, those are either part of our mission and values or they're marketing materials. And if you're silent, if you're ducking these things that affect us, schools are the place we all experience. Mm-hmm. And if you cannot make schools safe for your kids, then you can't live in that place. And if companies won't stand up on that, then they're basically telling this Republican bully, you can push us as far as you want to. We're going to remain silent no matter what you do to our people. And what I would ask of people is, use the tools that we have available. Use social media. Call this out. Go to your school board meetings. Challenge your legislature if you see these copycat cut and paste bills being introduced, because they really are cut and paste. This one used language that we don't even have in statute because it literally came from a right-wing. We have a website called Free to Say Gay, that gives you all the background and invites you to donate, to volunteer, and to understand this issue so that you can push back. And they're counting on people being asleep, and we've got to be wide awake and ready to fight back. And what they sharpen their knives on is always who they perceive to be politically the weakest. It's why they went after trans kids last year.
Yes.
Raise your hand if you know a trans kid. Not many people's hands are going to go up. And with that victory, it emboldened them to come after a larger swath of the population. So, understand that this is not just that first they came for and next they're coming for you. They're coming for you right now, too.
Yes. And before we let you go, that was so beautifully stated. Because I'm friends with your wife, I And you know, the work you do is so important, but I also know that you have been, you know, dealing with personal attacks. We here, as Jim said, have dealt with that ourselves. I think it's worth noting that even a cursory investigation by this team revealed DeSantis's spokesperson to certainly have the appearance of a Russian spy. I don't know what else to call her. But we know that we have been dealing with an information war, a malinformation war, character assassinations, and people paid to do these character assassinations. And I appreciate the fact that you bear the brunt of it, but it would be super helpful if you could just tell people that these things are real. And when you see the dog pile of malinformation and disinformation, to kind of have an alertness about it and recognize it as simply that, a campaign.
Absolutely. I think, you know, it is ugly. It is hard to be, you know, to bear the brunt of those attacks. But honestly, you know, I'm not a 17-year-old junior in high school having to read through and scroll through this vitriol and hatred that's being pushed at them by DeSantis and his spokesperson. You know, and I think part of the reason they're so angry is because we revealed the truth of what this bill is, not their, you know, prefabricated, you know, garbage line about parental rights. I'm a parent. This gave me no more rights. It took rights away from me. It made schools less safe for my kid.
Yes.
And so we exposed it, and they're furious, but we're not going to stop telling the truth about it.
Thank you.
And we're going to keep calling them out, and we're not going to be afraid. And honestly, what impresses me and gives me the greatest amount of hope is these kids. They're not afraid either. They're pissed, but they're not afraid.
It's
So
beautiful.
they may look back and wish this was a fight they hadn't picked, because there's a lot of people who are waking up to just how insidious, just how hurtful, hateful, cruel, divisive, and mean-spirited this is. And I think there are a lot of people, even people who would not put themselves on the left side of this divide, who are getting tired of this mean season. They're getting tired of everything that's being fed to them, telling them to hate their neighbor, hate everybody who doesn't think, look, love, worship like they do. I think that this is one of those fights where when you go, you seriously want to take a book about two male penguins out of schools as pornography, you've crossed a line into a place where I think they're going to start losing more and more people.
Oh, wow. Thank you so very much for that. That's exactly what my spirit needed. And
Wonderful.
we want to
Yeah.
thank you so much for being our very first breaking news segment. We cannot wait to put this out on our platforms and make people aware of this fight. And just thank you so much for everything that you do. And we are here to support your children and our children. We do this work for our children.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And send people free to say gay, and keep amplifying the message. We're gonna push back, and I think people they're ready to fight.
I think so
Thank you
too.
so much.
We agree.
I think so
We agree.
too. How wonderful. Thank you so
I'm down.
much.
Thank you,
Thank
Nadine.
you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Bye.
Wow. Amazing. Wow. I really hope that is what plays out, that this becomes the fight that they wish they hadn't picked.
Yeah.
That would be
Can I just make a
amazing.
couple points here?
Sure.
Of course.
So Fox News tried a character assassination on Nadine.
Yes.
And what they did was they took a context of her saying the next thing that's going to happen is they'll come for our children.
Mhm.
And they tried to make it out like she was being hysterical.
Mhm.
In actuality, what happened is they literally came for her children. They are trolling them online.
Mhm.
They're trolling high school children,
Mhm.
online. This is coordinated.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's time for trolling season to be over. I'm sorry.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly
Well,
right.
And
I'm
one of the other,
just
real quick,
yes.
Heidi, one of the other
Yes.
things that she brings up, which is, I think, important to notice and to remind ourselves of, is there is such a thing as, the tyranny of the minority.
Yes.
Philosophically, something Plato talked about in terms of the
Yes.
smaller population getting a tyrannical control over the majority of individuals.
That's right. That's
And,
right. I bring it up every third episode of Rad Pod, how the majority of Germans never woke up and voted for Hitler. That's not what autocratic capture is.
Yeah.
We are learning so much about this playbook, and we're going to keep on exposing it every single episode, every single week. Very first breaking news episode of Rad Pod Truth Survives. That's what we're about. We just had Nadine Smith just giving us our marching orders once again. Go to that website. What is the name of the website again, Sean?
It's freetosaygay.org. It'll be in the show notes.
Okay, freetosaygay.org, and just help her fight this. Help the children of Florida fight this. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.